morning. You're listening to Central Wisconsin's 24-hour information station, AM 1320 WFHR. It's time now for the Morning Magazine, brought to you by Comfort Air Heating, Cooling, Plumbing. Now, with the Morning Magazine, here's Carl Hilke.
Thank you, Jerry, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's show on AM 1320 and streaming live at WFHR.com. We also welcome our buddy Jesse from Wisconsin Rapids Community Media, who's digitally recording this for later air on the Solaris and Charter cable channels, as well as on their website. And the reason, Wood County Board Chairman Lance Pliml is here for his monthly update. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Carl. Thank you for having me today.
Happy Easter to you and everybody in the county.
You too. It is a beautiful morning. I'm going to take advantage of this one, I think.
Yeah, because believe me, the weather goes downhill from here. I guess to start off with, I usually like to ask if you have anything pending or that do you need to get off your chest right now. But let's talk. Maybe what we could do is get an update on. This was a year of moving to the new building downtown, and the River Block building. And how's that been working out?
Sure. Real interesting. About 6 years ago, we did a space needs study. Could have been 5 years ago. And then after we ascertained we needed additional space, then where are we going to go and how are we going to accomplish that? Spend the least amount of tax dollars we can and yet have a facility that we can operate in at least for the next generation or two. To our advantage, the River Block building became available. So we were able to, for a total cost of about $5 million, do what we would have spent somewhere between $30 and $40 million to have done. So from a financial aspect, it was fantastic. We finally have almost all of the departments moved over there. We're still making some moves in the courthouse that will move some people over there, but generally speaking, human services and all that they encompasses over there, our health department, our parks department, land and water conservation. You'll eventually probably have our human resources and our finance departments over there as we transition the courthouse more to a facility that has your elected offices in it. You know, your county clerk, county treasurer, register of deeds, the sheriff's department, and then the courts. And then also our infrastructure, the technology that we have both in our dispatch centers and in our computer centers, those will be housed in the courthouse themselves. So the transition has been, it was financially, from that respect, done in a very conservative way. It's worked out. I think the people that are over there generally like working in that building. And then the most important thing from a customer service standpoint, all of those people who receive services from those particular agencies receive those in a single building instead of bouncing around town from the courthouse to 12th Street to the Rapids Mall. Mm-hmm. So in that respect, it's been really good. And
city is happy because you got people downtown. Several hundred people working in that building downtown, and with what's planned for the Boys and Girls Club and YMCA, all of a sudden you're going to be having a whole lot of people back in downtown Wisconsin Rapids.
And part of the consideration there was, how do we accomplish this? How do we displace the fewest people? And then how do we solidify that downtown area as a viable business community? And when you move a couple hundred employees downtown every day, and then all the people they serve, those people, they eat lunch, they buy coffee,
right.
They shop in those areas. So I think it really will help invigorate that downtown area going forward. And it's one of the things that I think we're most proud of. We're at the end of a 2-year cycle. As you come into the spring election cycle, all county board supervisors, all local elections occur. So, for instance, our entire county board is up for re-election. And the neat part there is we don't participate in partisan politics. There's no D or R after your name.
Right.
So I guess in that respect, you're not as... Use these words, I'm starting to sound like I'm from the South. You're not as beholding to special interest groups as you might be as if your livelihood,
right.
your family's well-being depended on it, because local officials, for the most part, with very few exceptions, don't make a living in local politics. You're doing it strictly as public service. And so from that respect, I want to thank everybody out there at the local level, especially those county board supervisors who've served for the last 2 years. And as we will seat a new board in April.
Okay, and that leads into, since you mentioned the end of a biennium, and people don't understand the different levels of government. There's always confusion, and and I'm sure you get calls that would be better addressed to the city or the town or village, and people go, well, what is the county? And we've often said you're an arm of state government. So maybe we need to do a little tutorial.
Quick primer on that, yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Counties in Wisconsin operate under Dillon rule, and what that basically is it's powers specifically granted by the state or federal government for you to perform. You're an administrative arm of state government. So unless that duty or authority is specifically granted, you can't do it. As opposed to home rule, which many of the municipalities operate under. And Wisconsin's an interesting state because we have both Dillon rule and home rule. Some states are one or the other. Home rule allows you to do anything that hasn't specifically been precluded by those other government agencies. So, generally we have to follow what the state tells us to do. And I think that's best exemplified by the fact that our budget, don't hold me to these numbers, these are round numbers for conversation, but our budget's around $120 million. Of that $120 million, $100 million is already designated in the direction it goes and the amount it goes. The other $20 million is, if you want to call it discretionary spending, but dollars that we garner that we can do things in, such as improve our own infrastructure, to build out our dispatch centers, to improve our parks. So only $20 million of the $120 million are dollars that we actually, in some respect, get to figure out how we're going to spend. And then there's, those departments. What do counties do? I get calls all the time, and, you're probably alluding to this, is my garbage didn't get picked up Wednesday. How come you didn't do it? Well, counties don't pick up garbage.
Yes.
Some municipalities do. Some cities, towns, villages provide that service. Sometimes it's privately done, but we don't do that. So county government does a number of things. And number one's probably public safety. In fact, when we poll people in the community, say, what's the number one thing that you want? They say, we want to be personally safe when we walk out of our house. We want to feel we can go to the store, our kids can play in the parks. So public safety, and that would encompass the sheriff's department, DA's office, the courts, the local jail. Then we have public health, and our public health department deals with community safety, any pandemic or epidemic that might occur, inspections of not only restaurants, but beaches, public water supplies,
right,
and those types of things. Vital records, our Register of Deeds office, for instance, birth certificates, death certificates, land records, all of those are a function of county government, as well as our dispatch and emergency services. You remember a number of years ago, we consolidated dispatch to a single center in the county.
Right.
The county took that function over from those cities. This is part of the moving you asked about the first question. How about the river block? Well, as we've moved departments over there, we have reconfigured the courthouse. And 12 years ago or so, when we combined dispatch, we stuck them in the basement. And we said that's a temporary move, and as space becomes available, we're going to come up with a new dispatch center.
Right.
Well, 12 years later, as space allowed, we now have them in. And I'll tell you, state-of-the-art equipment that will deal with next-gen 911 when that becomes available, for instance, where you'll be able to text in 911 calls. The state's working on that. We have the capability to seamlessly move to that particular function. So you've got dispatch, you've got all the computer systems that handle all of that. And then we have child support. Child support agencies happen within the county. Land and water conservation departments. Human services, child protective services, and what you might just consider community welfare. Services to those people who might not otherwise be able to take care of themselves because of, either physical or mental challenges. All of that happens in the courthouse. The county clerk's office, which a big one, handles all the elections.
Right.
And then issues some licenses. If you're planning on getting married or you're planning on going overseas, they handle passports. They certainly handle marriage licenses, and we do some limited DMV stuff for motor vehicles in there too. And then planning and zoning with permits and shoreland zoning. Our veteran service office, which is huge. As we handle the veterans that come through. Those are some of the things that counties do. We have, depending on time of year and seasonal employees, somewhere between 600 and 700 employees. And you think that's impossible. But then we run a 24/7 nursing home at Edgewater. And we have a mental health facility up at the Northwood County Annex, which most of you might refer to as Norwood. And those are big operations, but provide regional service. So counties do a lot of things, and some of the things we're really proud of, Carl, and you talked about it, was the River Block building and getting that space need addressed for the future. When we built that original courthouse in 1955-56, there was no anticipation of having to run fiber through the building. There was no thought about is cell phone communication viable in those buildings. That technology changes every 5 or 6 years, and we're trying to be ready to address the next 30. The road improvements, as a county, we've bonded for road improvements at a rate about 5 times as fast as the state would have. We had roads and bridges crumbling. They were on 50-year maintenance and refurbishment cycles. They don't last 50 years with bigger, heavier vehicles that we have in today's world. So, we took that on, and the cost of the taxpayers, might have equated to something like, $10 a year on your tax bill, as opposed to spending $70 to $150 on an alignment, or $100 on a new tire as you hit a pothole. And then there's other things we do. The adult drug treatment courts. People say, what are we doing about the burgeoning drug problem? Well, we can't build enough jails. We can't have enough assistant DAs. We can't have enough judges to handle that. We have to figure out different and better ways to address that. The drug treatment court's been a success in our area. So those are some of the things that counties do, as opposed to what states do. It amazes me when they say, why don't you handle this problem? And I'm saying, well, I can't conscript an army. I can't sign a nuclear treaty with North Korea. And unless the state cedes me, for instance, the power to regulate something that they haven't currently done, like I said, I can't set up a National Guard unit. There's other things out there. Water's been a big issue.
Yes, water is a very big issue.
And water is one of those, there's not a single person on our board that doesn't understand water issues, probably better than anybody. We seated a water committee. We seated a manure irrigation committee to look at all of these. And we've advocated at the state level as hard and as often as we can to allow local control, because the counties and the Counties Association advocates local control constantly. But until the state decides to grant us that power, you tend to spin your wheels. And so the one thing you learn when you've been in office for a while is, it reminds me of somebody disarming a bomb. Right. And after they do it, somebody said, well, I could have cut that wire. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, but if you cut the wrong wire, the whole thing blows up. The actual snipping the wire is pretty simple. Mm-hmm. So when you get to government, it's kind of, from our county board perspective, it's knowing who to call, when to call them, when to press, and when to back off. And, it's a chess game, not a checkers game. So as much as I advocate for local control on an issue, if I know that I need state spending on something like roads, you might have to back off a little bit in some other area to have that cooperation. When the Speaker of the Assembly says, okay, that's enough, and you've gotten quite a bit already, maybe you say, yeah, that's probably a good time to take what we have, go home, work with it, and come back to fight Tuesday.
Okay. Now, one of the big issues involving county and state relationships has been the transportation issue. And you mentioned Wood County has bonded quite a bit. We decided to bond to get a jump on roads and bridges that needed to be fixed. You couldn't wait anymore. Are we any closer to, from what you're hearing from the County Boards Association and everything else, are we any closer to actually finding a long-term solution to Wisconsin's transportation needs? And how would you like to see the counties fit into that?
Well, yeah, there's probably 2 or 3 really big issues at the state level, and that's certainly, in my mind, the biggest. I happen to sit on the Local Government Institute Board of Directors. One of the things we dealt with was the roads. And a report came out about 2 years ago called Filling Potholes. Nonpartisan or bipartisan, about 11 ways to address this issue. My feeling is there's an understanding at the state level that this absolutely needs to be done. There's a great disharmony between the legislature, both the Assembly and the Senate and the governor's office as to how you're going to fund this. But to your point, in our counties, we know that we can maintain roads or spiff them up a little bit, bring them up to standards that they need to be at to survive for maybe $100,000 or $200,000 a mile, as opposed to $1 million a mile if we let it deteriorate for another number of years. And that's why we went out, we bonded for those dollars, and we got to jump on this. We have a tremendous infrastructure, structural deficit in this state. Everybody's aware of it. None of them can agree on how they're going to handle it. But in conversations in Madison, I think there's some realization that the vast amount of dollars that get spent in the state gets spent in the southeast corridor of the state. And that's for a number of reasons. More representatives down there at the state level, more traffic and more people. That's going to probably need to be addressed by open road tolling. And that's finally being discussed. You probably have to re-index the gas tax. The move they made the other day to tax electric and hybrid vehicles a little bit different because they also use the roads even though they don't pay the gas tax at as high a level, probably addresses a little bit of that. At some point they may do a vehicle miles traveled system where they would exempt a number of miles, thousands of miles, let's say, for rural Wisconsin, because you have to drive a great distance between places. So that's our number one issue, followed immediately by the other infrastructure, and that's communication. Until we have broadband build out in this part of the state, we're not going to attract business. Right now the southeast corner of the state's dealing with too many jobs. We have more jobs than we can actually fill right now, but when you look at 13,000 high-tech jobs going to the southeast corner of the state, they get all the press. And that's where the money's going to go. And I'm a firm believer of, if you build it, they will come. So I'd like to see some of those dollars allocated up here. Yeah. The other one is juvenile justice that they're dealing with. And you've heard they're going to close Lincoln Hills and Copper Lakes up there. That's in reaction to some of the disciplinary actions that occurred up there. And I can tell you, having sat with some of those people, many of those have been cleared up. Some of those issues happened in the past, and I think they're being addressed. But those facilities are going to be closed. They're going to build regional facilities. There was a realization there. But even the state Senate and state assembly were arguing about how that's going to happen. Yeah, there's no agreement. They both agreed it needed to happen. One didn't like the way that the other one just addressed it right away without bringing them into the conversation. The governor was pushing to get it done. It will get done. Again, it will happen. I'm just not sure they have a final plan as to how that's going to occur and then where we're going to place people.
If you're just joining us, welcome. In part one of the Morning Magazine, we're getting our Wood County update from Wood County Board Chairman Lance Pliml. Well, spring is here, and it was kind of, I guess, would it be fair to say it was a disappointing winter sports season in most aspects, except for maybe ice fishing?
Yeah, it was very disappointing. We had early cold, and then it warmed up, and then we had these ice storms, and we'd have rain in between. And, from a lot of the dollars that we garner in the winter into our economy come from those winter sports activities, whether it be, cross-country skiing, those people who snowshoe, snowmobiling, and then our Powers Bluff facility. And some of those facilities were not open at all this winter, our snowmobile trails in parts of the county. Some were open for a couple of days up in the northwest part of the county. And then Powers Bluff was open for a very, very short part of the time. I think we had 2 weeks where we were open up there because of lack of snow. So, yeah, disappointing. And then that translates to occupancy in hotels, people spending money in restaurants. So, yeah, I'm hoping spring comes early, that it comes warm, that things dry up. And that we get people out there into our campgrounds and other facilities that drive county revenue.
Do you have an indication based on advanced bookings what kind of a season you're looking at?
I think we're looking at a good one. Once we've gone to the ability to book ahead of time, to do that online, to pay by credit card, we're able to fill some of those campgrounds up ahead of time. I think we're going to see a great summer in that respect. But again, all of those are somewhat weather related. If you get a complete washout on a Memorial Day, a Labor Day, or 4th of July, that impacts entire summer revenue numbers.
A listener wanted to know if you have an opinion on the election, on the state treasurer's office, the elimination of that, which is on the ballot in the spring. Does that affect Wood County? It wouldn't
affect Wood County directly in any way whatsoever. And I think it's an interesting one because you have a treasurer who wants to eliminate an office.
Well, and they've taken most of the responsibilities away from
the Department of Administration. And frankly, I haven't really looked at that close enough to find out if that's a good idea or a bad idea. But I tend to believe that when you consolidate power in one place, you tend, this is a general statement, you tend to have less accountability in the long run. So no effect at the county level from our perspective. But then again, as you have separation and delegation of power in Madison, that could be a concern. But I can honestly tell you, I've not delved into that one real deeply. But since the question's been posed, it's something that I'm going to ask today when I make a call down there.
Well, yeah, because I think you make a very good point. When you consolidate everything in one department, power. They say power corrupts, or could make.
And absolute power corrupts, absolutely. Yeah, and that's why the counties association, and I've been lucky enough to serve as their president. The one thing we advocate for is local control. The closer you are to the decision maker as a resident, the more impact you have on the decision, and you have the ability to be more fluid in those decisions and react to those things that occur on a daily basis. Somebody asked me the other day, what's your priorities? Well, my priorities typically start with the first 2 phone calls I get in the morning, and how are we going to handle the emergency that occurred? Long-term planning happened a long time ago, and from our perspective, we touched on it. That was, the space needs we had, public safety, communication, our infrastructure, and then how we handle the ever burgeoning problem in our court system. Those are local. I have to deal with those, but in that, every day something comes up, whether it's a terrible accident, a liability issue somewhere, a road buckled. Those are the emergent things. I'm sure everybody does it in their job at home. You do it as a parent. You plan on going to lunch with your friend in some days, and your child is sick, and you stay home, and that doesn't happen, or school gets canceled because of bad weather. Mm-hmm. So you adapt every day.
Okay. Looking forward in terms of space needs, are we looking at either the selling off of any county properties or additional facility needs in the future?
No, we're actually looking at offloading some of the county property we have as we have been able to consolidate those services. So this is a plug to go out and make a bid, maybe.
Okay, go ahead.
We had the house, the Airport Avenue property,
right,
that we used as an AODA facility. That is currently for sale. We had the 12th Street property that Human Services and Unified Services used to run out of. That property was just appraised and is for sale. We just sold part of the property we had over on 17th and Rosecrans, kind of adjacent to the highway department, because we realized we don't have a need for that going forward, and a portion of that was just sold. So, yeah, we're looking at offloading those, putting those back on the tax rolls, and then, the whole goal is to consolidate those services but really for the benefit of those residents in the county. So when you walk in the door, everything can happen in one place.
Yeah, what I've heard and what people like about the new River Block building is, I can go here, I can go here, I can go here, get all my business done, and I'm on my way.
And the same thing when you go in the courthouse, hopefully. When you walk in there, it's clerk of courts, register of deeds, the county clerk, and you walk in, and every service that you need is right there. And that was the goal in the long run.
Okay, so as we go forward, I guess let's hope for a good spring, a nice warm spring and a warm summer, and busy parks in Wood County.
Well, that helps drive revenue, and it doesn't just drive parks revenue, Carl. It drives the economy, and and one of the things, there's a lot of things we can't do as a county, other than set ourselves up as a community for success, and that is infrastructure, and you touch on it every time, and that's the highways and the communication. We can make it a viable community to develop, and so much of that is having those tourists come into the area and see what a great city we are down here, what a great community, and what a great county we have.
Well, to you and everybody in Wood County, Happy Easter.
Happy Easter to you, too, and everybody out there.
Okay. And with that, we'll wrap up part one of today's edition of the Morning Magazine on AM 1320 and WFHR.com. We also say thank you to our friends at Wisconsin Rapids Community Media.